What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Real Reds Talk, an authentic football fan channel made in Manchester. And what a day it is. We've got the transfer window is officially open. The Euros start tonight. You've got Germany versus Scotland. We've got James on from the Muppeteers to discuss all transfers as well at 6:30. And he'll have all the latest on all the transfers like Elise, Branthwaite, and the rest of the stories that are being linked. But on today's afternoon news show, we've got a couple of transfer stories, but we've also got some interesting things coming out from The Athletic and Laurie Whitwell. I think there's a couple of interesting stories and articles about Antony, Sancho, Eric Ten Hag's tactics, Casemiro, and Varane. You've also got a story on Wan-Bissaka potentially being sold. There are potential suitors in Italy and in the Premier League who could be after Aaron Wan-Bissaka's signature. And we've just had news come out recently in the past 5 minutes, or past 30 minutes, that there's going to be some improvements, a £50 million investment in Carrington training ground. So that is absolutely fantastic news. But we're going to kick things off with Aaron Wan-Bissaka, because that was, from what I remember chronologically, I think that was the first one that kind of came out this morning from Fabrizio Romano. So I'll read you out the kind of article that he put out, or the quote, and the quote's also on the news sticker on the screen as well. Aaron Wan-Bissaka could still leave Manchester United in case of a good offer. There is interest from the Premier League and from Italy. Now, I'm very interested to know, first and foremost, number one, what do you guys think he is worth? How much should we take for him? Obviously, we bought him for £50 million. And at the time, I remember them going through it, saying, you know, we scouted 800 right-backs, and we looked at this guy, and all the data, and da-da-da, and we've come up with this option, which was like the obvious option at the time anyway, coming from Crystal Palace, another one off their conveyor belt. I think if you look at some of the players they're developing at the moment, you look at Eze that's there, you look at Gehi, you look at, obviously, Elise, who's a big talking point at the moment. You know, there's so many players, even like Mitchell at left back looks like he's a promising player. You can go through the full squad. Decore, I think, looked really good before he picked up his injury. So, yeah, Crystal Palace are doing a phenomenal job there, and we decided to take Wan-Bissaka off their hands. I don't think he's developed going forward enough to be a mainstay right back. When you talk about him as a pure one-on-one defender, I mean, that guy can lock down anyone on the planet. And that's not an overstatement. We've seen it. The Carabao Cup final is a perfect example where, you know, Dalot, St. Maximum had Dalot on toast, on absolute toast. And Ten Hag had to bring on Wan-Bissaka to shut it down, and he did it immediately. You remember Wan-Bissaka versus Mbappe and Neymar in the PSG game as well. Sterling he had on toast every time we come up against City. Sterling never got a sniff. And this was when he was in like his prime and playing really, really well. Whoever he's played up against, he can match him for speed. You know, in the final, he was up against Doku when he came on. You know, a fresh Doku as well off the bench and did relatively well off him. People will talk about the goal that Doku scored, but that had nothing to do with Wan-Bissaka. That was someone else not following the man. So, yeah, in terms of 1v1, he is that kind of, not a joker in the deck, but he's that card that you can pull that's just like, you know, if you need to lock something down, bang. I'm trying to think of like a comparison in like Yu-Gi-Oh or Pokemon or something. Is there anything? No. Trap. Wasn't there a card called Trapdoor or something in Yu-Gi-Oh? It's a very niche reference, but you take my point. Like, you could just play the card and it'll shut it down. The problem is going forward then gets locked down because he's not great offensively. So, but I still think he could be a huge asset to whatever team he goes to. And, you know, if someone like a West Ham, for example, is interested in him, I think he'd be incredible for them, and he'd suit their system a lot more, because obviously they're much more compact and much more defensive, and he's expected to do a certain job as a right back there. And I think if the right offer comes in, we should definitely consider it. But the question is, what is the right offer? What is Aaron Wan-Bissaka worth in today's market? Are we talking 30 million quid? Are we talking 25? Are we talking more? Should we be asking more for him? 40? Like, what do we think? So many other players that should be sold before Wan-Bissaka, who's actually had a decent season. Can't take you seriously now you're talking about Pokemon. I'm just trying to think of a reference, like, because you're playing a card, you're trying to lock something down. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I was trying to think of a reference. I think in terms of where he would suit, I think Italy The fact that they're linked with him, I think he'd be phenomenal there. Italy focus a lot more on, kind of defensive positioning and tactics. And any player who's spoken about the Italian league will say that. It's very focused on defending and tactics and stuff. So I think he'd probably suit there regardless what team he went to. I think he'd be successful. And if you look at the track record of the majority of our players who have gone there, they've done well. Even some of the shit players that we didn't like have done well. They've gone to like Inter Milan and they've won trophies, or they've gone to Roma, like in Smalling's case, and done pretty good as well. They was calling him Smaldini at one point. So I would look at that as a path if I was Wan-Bissaka himself, and I would say, yeah, new country, move to Italy. Wages won't drop too much, a chance of winning something. Because let's be honest, he's second fiddle to Dalot. Dalot's going to start there. Dalot was one of the players of the season. So he's going to be the right back predominantly. United are going to look to bring in a left back anyway. And they've already discussed that. Kirkes from Bournemouth, for example. And then we've got Malacia and Shaw as well who can play there. So it's going to be a backup right back. So if we can get rid of him, if we can sell him for, let's say, 30 million quid, right? And you've got someone who's Frimpong, whose release clause is like 35 million. That to me is a no-brainer. If you want to be ruthless, cutthroat, improve your team, I'm telling you now, that is something you need to do if you want to progress on that right-hand side and have Dalot and Frimpong fighting it out. Because don't forget, Dalot can play left-back as well. So, yeah, sell him. Would he be your... The question is that you throw out there, would he be your starting right-back in a winning Premier League team? Would he start for Real Madrid? Would he start for Manchester City? I don't think he would. I think it's just like a level below that for me, personally. And I love Wan-Bissaka. I think he's done, like I said, he's locked down some of the best players in the world. But there are many questions going forward that aren't answered. And when you have a winger who's isolated a lot of the time, it's because the wing-back isn't offering them kind of overlaps. He does it sometimes, but he's very hesitant and he sticks to his kind of defensive game and his 1v1s. So, I don't know. I think the opinion is relatively split on Wan-Bissaka. And I understand it. But I'm telling you now, if you want to be cutthroat and you want to win things, something like this is a sale, in my opinion, that you need to make and bring in a Frimpong. Because offensively, Frimpong offers so much more. I just don't know if they sell him, if that budget is going to go on a right back, or if that budget's going to be allocated towards something else. Because Frimpong's the only one that comes to mind simply because of his release clause. Who else is there that's a right back that's out there that's going for around 30 to 40 million quid? Because United are going to have to make sales to buy a player anyway. You see what I'm saying? So that one's a bit... I don't know. I suppose the question I'm asking, and I'll leave you to this just on the Wan-Bissaka story, is... would it bother you if he stayed, most of the point? Rather than, if we do sell him, how much should we sell him for? Should Italy take him or whatever? They're the kind of light questions. But the main question is, would you be bothered if he stayed? Or is it not really something that bothers you too much, if that makes sense? Are you just happy for him to stay and focus on other priority positions? We're talking about centre-backs. We speak about Branthwaite last night. Me and Sam went live when the personal terms got agreed. Obviously still a way off agreeing on a certain budget. We need a midfielder. We need a striker. So, in that sense, it's not a priority position, is it? I know what you're saying. Who's going to buy Wan-Bissaka realistically? Italy and a couple of teams in the Premier League, Romano's put, who are interested in him. Why would Frimpong join United? The same reason why millions of other players have joined United. Dalot wouldn't have done the same job on Doku. Yeah, I agree. That's what I mean. So sometimes you can play him in certain games, but I think your right-hand side becomes null and void when that happens. So, I don't know. I suppose that's why it's all about opinion, right? It's very 50-50 split. I think you ask someone like, I'm thinking about someone in the team, you ask someone about Sancho, let's say, for example, I would probably say 80% would turn around and say, yeah, he needs to be sold. Maybe more than that, maybe 90%. You ask someone about Wan-Bissaka and they're like 50-50. So, yeah, I'm not absolutely pushing for him to go. But if a good offer came in, I wouldn't turn it down and I'd take it because I think you can still improve on that right-hand side. Right back, not an issue. Striker, defender are needed. 100%. 100% I agree with that. What we're saying in YouTube, let's have a look. Good afternoon to everyone. Afternoon all. Wan-Bissaka, Snorlax, asleep when you don't have a flute. See, we've got another Pokemon reference there. Loving it, Sean. Sticking with the theme. He's a great fullback, just not great going forward, but he has improved. Alexander Cortel says, come on to the Tartan army. Do you know what? I wish he's looked tonight. For England, Germany and Scotland playing is just like, I don't care who wins. You know, draw for all I care. That'd be the best result for England. We have our own kind of enemies in that sense. 20 to 25 million is fine. I haven't seen any decent links apart from his opposite in Frimpong. That's it, Ed. That's all I've seen. I haven't seen any other right backs linked with us. Maybe one in France. I think there was one. I can't remember the guy's name. There was a player that was linked with in France who's a right back. I think it was from Monaco, potentially. But that's it. That's it. Dumfries, no, I think them links have gone. That was a lot stronger last year. But there could be something in the swap deal in that sense if they wanted to do it, says Oscar John. Grace is saying, could we make Cambuala a hybrid centre-back, right-back? I don't know. I think he needs to learn his trade at centre-back first before we start discussing, you know, kind of moving the younger players out wide. If Wan-Bissaka's positioning was better, then he could stay, but I'd rather have a change. Keep him if we're getting peanuts. Sell him if we get a fair offer. I think, yeah, as always, there's always sensible people in the chat. So we'll park that discussion on Wan-Bissaka. That's what I was going to call him. We'll park that discussion on Aaron Wan-Bissaka for the moment. And we'll circle back to the end if we need to. I want to discuss this. There's a couple of interesting quotes from an article that The Athletic put out. So Laurie Whitwell put a thing out, and it speaks about Ten Hag's tactics last season. It speaks about Casemiro and Varane's concerns. It speaks about Sancho and Antony struggling at certain times and things that went on behind closed doors. I think there's a couple of little gems in there from Laurie Whitwell. We need to get him back on the show at some point. I thought the show we did with him, at the time, it was during when the whole Qatar and thing was ongoing. I thought it was a really interesting interview that we did, so I'd love to have him back on if possible. We'll try to make that happen. And we'll get Andy Mitten on as well at some point. I think that'd be amazing. But all in good time. So I'll start with the Sancho and Antony story. So Ten Hag felt Sancho was an incredible player, but that his attitude did not correspond to a winning culture. After Erik Ten Hag's second game in charge, Sancho told him United had bought the wrong player because his preference was to play on the left rather than the right. Before the Arsenal game in September, during a training session, Jadon Sancho did not commit to pressing as an opposition player in the practice match in the way Erik Ten Hag wanted. Sancho was offered the chance to end his involvement earlier, which he took by walking off the pitch. Ten Hag referenced Sancho's training levels after the Arsenal defeat, and the player responded with his infamous social media post. Ten Hag attempted to explain his point to Sancho in one meeting at Carrington and attempted to schedule another summit a few days later in which it was expected Sancho would apologise privately face-to-face, but this did not happen. Now, for everyone who's Sancho fanboys and has always given Ten Hag shit about this, does that not just go to show you his attitude just absolutely stinks? And he only wants to go to a place where his fucking people admire him and take off his shoes for him. And, like, I've never got this defending Sancho thing that people say, like, you know, well, obviously he's got his side to the story and blah, blah, blah. And I remember Benny McCarthy saying he was trying to advise Sancho that he should, you know, go and apologise. And he was like, no, because if I do that, then people will believe that I was lazy or whatever. Well, is that not, that one line there, it couldn't be asked pressing in a training session. You're at United, you're in the Premier League. You know, that can't be accepted. Does Foden say that? Or does Bernardo Silva say that? Some of the best talents in the world. No, they work as hard as anybody else because you don't get off scot-free because you're slightly talented. Do you know what I mean? It's absolute nonsense. So I've been very, very firm with this Sancho thing since the day it happened, basically. And saying this kid has got a track record everywhere he's been. If you've done your research and you look at him, even at coming up for the youth at Watford, and then at City, and then at Dortmund, he's had red flag. And that is a criticism on United scouting as well, because when we bought him, we needed a right winger, and he would prefer to play on the left. It says that in there as well. So that's also a fault on our part. We did not do our due diligence on him as an athlete as well. In terms of talent-wise, I think he's, you know, could be one of the best wingers. We've seen it for Dortmund. The metrics he was putting up was out of this world. But application is as important. Otherwise, you know, you've seen plenty of players come and go who are all the talent in the world, but they don't apply himself. One who was coming up for the academy at United in Ravel Morrison was one of the best players up and coming. Was like, people spoke about him in training like he was honestly the next coming of Christ. But obviously, if due to things going outside of his life and other kind of little bits, couldn't really focus on the pitch, and then he was going from club to club to club, and then eventually his career just completely fizzled out. So application is as important as anything, and Sancho doesn't have that application. You hear too many stories on this kid, way too many for my liking. Who do you think is going to come first and second in the Euros, and who do you think will be dark horses? Just a quick rattle off. I think Germany will win it. I think Portugal or France will come second, and I think dark horses will be Netherlands, in my opinion. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on Sancho, how you feel about that situation after reading that kind of article. Thought it was a little bit, we all knew the crack with the situation anyway, but there was a little bit more detail in there. A couple of gems from Laurie. There's a reason City kept Foden and not Sancho, says Grace, absolutely. Oscar saying, what's happening with Elise? Heard he's going Chelsea now. Chelsea are in talks and Chelsea are pushing for him. United can't do anything until we sell Greenwood and Sancho on that side. So, you know, if Chelsea really want that deal, they can make it happen, I think, because Elise is open to going there. Charlie saying, Wan-Bissaka would need a new contract, maybe on reduced wages, but the wage structure confuses me. They'll give out contracts that grant wages on performance. How can Brandt get 150k if this is true? I don't think they're going to offer him a new deal. I know he's got 1 year left or something. I don't think they'll offer him a new deal, to be honest with you. Antony's story, why is the press digging up something that happened during the Liverpool Cup game? Do they not have anything better to write? Well, let's talk about that Antony story then, because you give me the perfect segue there. So, Ten Hag gave Antony brutal criticism in the dressing room, even though apparently he favourites him. Give Antony brutal criticism in the dressing room after his display from the bench in the 2-0 win over Everton in March, to the extent that Antony appeared visibly affected. When Antony showed his frustration to being moved to left-back against Liverpool and Arsenal last season, in the dressing room afterwards, Ten Hag ripped into the Brazilian, telling him bluntly he had to play where he was told. And that's what you want, firm. You know, saying, listen, I don't care if I brought you over and you're the player that I selected and pushed to buy. You're not, like, people talk about favouritism, and maybe that was the case to a certain point. You can definitely argue the fact that, look, he could have dropped him early on in the season, 1,000,000%. I was screaming for Ahmad to start. And even Sancho had a fantastic pre-season, and even he didn't start then. So that I agree with. That side of things, I'm like, yeah. You know, he's right on that. The manager got that wrong. But it's not favouritism in the sense that I've just read that out for you there. He's drilling into him in the changing rooms. You know, moaning about playing at left back. So fucking what? Do you think John O'Shea moaned? Do you think Darren Fletcher moaned? Do you think Raphael moaned when he had to play on the wing or whatever it was? Like, you do it for your team. You know, Casemiro, I know he's had his arguments and stuff with the manager, but, you know, when he got asked to do a job at centre-back, and people would say it weren't much of a job, at least he filled in there and did a job for the team. And I think that's why I was a little bit pissed off with Ten Hag as well. So, yeah, Antony's attitude is almost like it's not worth the player that you are. Sometimes you take a player's attitude on, like an Mbappe or Ronaldo or whatever, or ego. You take it on because they're that good of a player. It's undeniable. Antony has the ego of, like, a Maradona or a Ronaldo, but then the ability of, like, a fucking Aaron Lennon. So, yeah, them two, he needs to check himself sometimes. And God knows what's going to happen with him next season, because we've got an £85 million hole burning in our pocket. And I don't know if they're going to keep him or if they're going to be at least try and sell him. How much you're going to realistically get for him. I think they're going to keep hold of him. I think they're going to stick with him. I saw something come out about Antony a couple of months ago that Ineos think he's an elite player and they think he'll be worth the money that we spent. I don't know if that's being put out there to try and sell him. But yeah, Booms is saying the disrespect to Aaron Lennon. Yeah, sorry, Aaron Lennon. It is really, to be honest. Because I'm sure statistically Aaron Lennon put up much better numbers than Antony did. So, Egder's saying some players shouldn't be here. I like Greenwood playing ability too much, toxicity around him. Oscar's saying, I'm happy to sacrifice the Elise deal to make sure we get Bran Flakes. I love the Bran Flakes reference, Oscar. Think that deal is almost done, but they want £80 million or more, I think. Well, don't forget, I mentioned at the start of the show, and I'm going to plug it again. Sorry if it annoys people. We've got James on from the Muppeteers at 6:30 tonight. We moved it back a little bit because we appreciate the Euros is on. So we've got James on. Opening transfer window today. He's going to have a lot of news on everything. He was speaking about Branthwaite, Elise last night, and he's bang on with the majority of things. Anyone who follows him, Muppeteers on Twitter, they know he's concrete on information. So I'm very excited to get him on at 6:30. There's so many things me and Sam want to ask him. So do not miss that one because it's going to be a very good show. Right, moving on to the next bit of the article. A lot of stuff in here from Laurie. So Casemiro and Varane disagree with the manager at points during the season. So Casemiro and Rafael Varane spoke to United teammates about approaches taken by Carlo Ancelotti and Zinedine Zidane at Real Madrid, which gave players more freedom and greater agency on workload, and how Ten Hag's positional style of football was not to their taste. They were told by staff that Madrid is a completely different club to United, and La Liga is a slower competition with less strength in depth than the Premier League, so those same liberal techniques would not work. But Casemiro and Varane, having won multiple titles, had strong feelings and became dissenting voices. So obviously they was airing their concerns with the manager. And you know what? With that, you can't really argue it, because I absolutely understand what they were saying. There was points during last season where I'm sure you guys who are watching were pulling your hair out during the season. Like, just what on earth are you playing like that for? What is that giant hole in the midfield? Why are we so attacking? Why are we going into games based on a flip of a coin, basically, to say, well, we've got better players, so we'll turn it into a street fight. I described this at one point as like the Nate Diaz of football. We'll just turn it into like a dirty boxing match, and then let's just see who comes out on top. And sometimes, we'd beat a team, and you'd be like, oh, okay, well, we got away with it there. And then sometimes results like Crystal Palace, Nottingham Forest, Fulham would happen, and you'd be like, well, that wasn't worth it, was it? So yeah, just a bit on the tactics here. Ten Hag continued to instruct for a higher starting line so that his team could squeeze the play in the final third. It was the blueprint mapped out by United hierarchy, but the team would drop deeper than Ten Hag intended, leaving large spaces in midfield. And look, the reason why I mention and reference the injuries so much is because when you have a system that you start with the season, so they want a high press, it would obviously play a high line with that, so that the press is together, so you're not leaving any spaces whatsoever. You have to have a certain individual player profile to do that, and certain pressing triggers, and know how to do it as a cohesive group. When you're chopping and changing in every position, every single game, it almost makes it virtually impossible. Right, and especially when you're bringing in an unfit Johnny Evans into the back line with Casemiro alongside him, and then you've got Wan-Bissaka at left back and Dalot on the left-hand side. There's so much disjointed thing there. It's almost like, let's just defend the box, because the wing-backs aren't committing to the press, so that leaves a big gap there. The defensive line's dropping deeper and deeper because they haven't got the pace to deal with players that are running in behind. So then the gap between the midfield and the defence gets even bigger. So it just becomes an absolute mess. And fans for a long time were craving pragmatism to, probably the second half of the season. And he didn't do it until the end. He introduced that kind of Bruno false nine system for the last 3 or 4 games, and it paid off. So, rightfully so, a lot of fans were saying, where was this pragmatism, 4 or 5 months ago when we was losing stupid games like the ones I just referenced? So, I think Casemiro and Varane absolutely had every right to voice their opinion. If they've won things. They've won multiple Champions Leagues, World Cups. They've been there. They've done it before. I understand that side of it. But I also think there's context on Ten Hag's side, because the amount of injuries was just, outrageous. And that is going to hinder anyone's playing style. You always see with teams have a couple of important players missing, they can drop off. City missed Rodri for 4 games, and he didn't win 1 game. And that's 1 player. We didn't have our top left back for most of the season, our best centre-backs for the majority of the season, a brand new keeper, a Casemiro's legs completely fallen off. You can go through the whole team. A strike only had 1 striker. Sometimes you have to play Rashford as a 9. So that's why I think it's a valid excuse. Again, that's what I think, but people disagree. That's what football's about. If Casemiro retires, would you think Mainoo's a daily starter, or would you get a replacement? Not as a 6. I think Mainoo's an 8. That's why I'm not fussed about the Frenkie de Jong transfer anymore, because we've got a midfielder there as an 8 who I would just keep in that position and start for the majority of games. Like, you don't need to touch that position. It's the 6 that we need. Kobbie Mainoo needs a combative, athletic, strong ball winner alongside him in that midfield. I love João Neves. We're going to be dropping something maybe when we're live later on, a members video, whilst we're with James, so keep an eye out for that on João Neves. There were a couple of concerns with him, but yeah, if you want a profile to sit alongside Kobbie who's going to complement him, someone like an Amadou Onana, if he was a bit better on the ball, would be a perfect kind of blend, if you know what I'm saying. But I think it's interesting to see who they go and get there, because we know Creative winger, we're looking at least, right? Centre-backs, we're looking at Euro, we're looking at Branthwaite. The midfield, I don't know who we're looking at necessarily. You know, I've seen names linked. You know, João Neves, Onana, earlier on's been linked. There's been a couple of Humlin's been linked as well. But I actually, concrete, Fofana's another one as well at Monaco. I don't know who they're going to go and get. So I think that midfield's very interesting. Bruno Guimaraes from Newcastle, that would be fantastic, but we ain't signing Guimaraes. Cost about 100 million quid. Not a chance of we getting him. Honestly, I would be absolutely astonished if we signed someone like Bruno Guimaraes. I really would. But there's no doubt we need a number 6 in that position, and that's exactly what the members video is about. So you're going to get a double whack at 6:30. You're going to get James from Upper discussing transfers, and you're going to get a members video as well for all the members that are in the chat. If you want to become a member, click the link in the description or the join button next to the notification bell. Right, let's get on to the story about Carrington then. Let me have a quick swig of this. So Sir Jim announces plans. Manchester United will commence work to modernise the men's first team building at Carrington next week. The £50 million project will have a focus on creating a high performance collaborative environment for players and staff. And this is a quote from Sir Jim Ratcliffe. "We want to create a world-class environment for our teams to win. When we conducted a thorough review of the Carrington training facilities and met with our men's first team players, it was clear the standards had fallen below some of our peers. This project will ensure Manchester United's training ground is once more renovated to the highest standard." Hallelujah. Can I get a hallelujah in the chat? Thank God. I mean, this is needed doing for a long, long time. We've been speaking about this for years and years and years. It's just logical. Better environments, train, recover, development. Naturally, you're going to get a better on-field performances. State-of-the-art facilities, obviously going to attract players as well. That's something that people won't discuss. But, you know, when Leicester are buying players or Tottenham are buying players, they're going to the training ground and you hear players talk about it. They're like, I was super impressed. I walked in there, I was like, wow, state-of-the-art facilities, what's going on here? So naturally, you know, you're going to attract more players. That's something that you can offer as part of the package. Also, as well, having these upgraded facilities, injury prevention, rehabilitation is going to be much better. You're going to increase staff proficiency. It's just logic, isn't it? You just listen to it all. It's absolute logic. And United should be at this standard, let's be honest. United should be the gold standard for these kind of things. And places like Carrington and even Old Trafford have just been, you know, since 2002, whatever it was, have just been slowly degrading. So, and everyone else has caught up and then gone past us. So it's time to catch back up now. And also, United are going to reap the kind of long financial benefits for the reasons that I've just mentioned. So it's a no-brainer. It's needed doing for a long, long time. And it can only be positive. Look, it's going to cost a lot of money. But like I said, long-term, financially, you're going to reap the rewards back. And Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos will know that. And obviously the Glazers just sat there happy for this to happen because they're like, yeah, you go do it, mate. You sort everything out on the football side. We just care when the checks are coming in. You know, if we get our dividends and whatever it is, then yeah, you sort out all that. And naturally, if they get it right, then they're going to get even more money. So it's a win-win for the Glazers, which I don't like. But if United is successful, then I'll take it in that sense. We do not see the fire from Erik ten Hag except for one presser. It must be scary when that man tears into you. I reckon he's got a proper, you know, stern, strict look when shit goes tits up in the dressing room, or you know, because you don't need to show it to the media. The media just jump on it behind closed doors. If he wants to do that, that's absolutely fine. Obviously, you had managers who are quite, like Mourinho, for example, who are quite strong on camera and quite strong with the personalities. If none of these players want to work for the team, leave. Absolutely, Edgar. Agree with that. KD says, I'd definitely keep Wan-Bissaka, uniquely gifted in 1v1s and a crucial piece in certain games against very tricky wingers, an excellent squad player, very hard to replace, unlike the rest. Well, like I mentioned at the start of the video, it's not an absolute priority for me, but if we've got a good offer, I'd definitely consider it. Kobe is an 8, but that's why I wanted Neves. He could play a 6 or an 8. Neves would be a dream player to get, but I think I'd get Fofana instead, 1/3 of the price of Neves. But in that sense, sometimes you pay for what you get, Charlie. And Benfica don't really miss when it comes to talent. Look at some of the players they've produced. Let me bring up a list for you. And I'm sure you'll know the majority of them anyway. I mean, I know some of them off the top of my head, but I just want to... Edison, Semedo, Lindelof, Cancelo, Axel Witsel, Bernardo Silva, Jovic, João Felix, Di Maria, David Luiz. I mean, it's crazy. And then, obviously, Darwin Núñez of late, as Nemanja Matic, I don't know if I mentioned him as well, but Darwin Núñez, obviously, Liverpool bought him from Benfica as well. You've got João Neves there, and there's probably more that I've not even mentioned. Like, their conveyor belt is absolutely outrageous. I think they'll be stubborn with the price. I think they'll push for because the release clause is like 100 million euros. I think United will probably try offer around 70, but I don't even know if we've got that money. If you're gonna spend 60 million on Branthwaite and then you want to buy Euro as well and you want to buy a lease and yeah, I don't know where the money's coming from. I would keep Wan-Bissaka. He done well last season. Well, there's quite a lot of people saying that. I'm quite surprised, to be fair. Who's paying 25 mil for Wan-Bissaka? Not a hope. We could get 25 million for him. 100% we get 25 mil for him. Play Wan-Bissaka centre-back as part of a 3, bring in Frimpong. No, Wan-Bissaka goes down way too much for him to play. I always see this centre-back narrative with him in a back 3 or back 5. He goes down way too much. Do you not remember is it the Liverpool game where he gave a penalty away in the last minute for Salah to score? You'd see a lot more of that, I'm telling you, if he was at centre-back. So, yeah. I think there's going to be a couple of shocks, just to kind of round off the show and come full circle back to Wan-Bissaka. I think there's going to be quite a few shocks a couple of players that people might not be expecting to be sold might go out the doors. And some people might not like it, but sometimes, like I said, you need to be ruthless this summer. And if you want to go get the targets that you need, and you need to sell players like Wan-Bissaka, I'd be open to it. Because usually you keep the favourites and you want to win games. If you think we're going to improve by selling Wan-Bissaka and go and get Frimpong so we're better offensively, then do it. Do it. And let's see what happens. I don't mind it at all. But yeah, we are officially in to the transfer window. We've got the Euros tonight. We've got another video dropping. We'll drop it whilst we're live for the members in the chat at 6:30. So, like I keep saying, do not miss that show because it's going to be very exciting. We want to talk to him about Elise. We're going to talk to him about Branthwaite and any questions you guys have as well, or any topics you want to ask James about, put them in the chat and we'll get into them towards the end like we always do as well. So, yeah, enjoyed this afternoon news show. I had quite a bit to get through there, but we got through it together. Appreciate everyone tuning in. Please do smash that like button. If you're on TikTok watching right now, check us out on YouTube. The link is in the description. Real Reds Talk, the fastest growing football community on the planet. And loads of people are enjoying the content, and we love to see that. So, yeah, we're on 5,444 subscribers. We're 6 off 5,050. So, like I said, if anyone live who's watching now, or if you're even watching later on in the day and you enjoy it, hit that subscribe button. And yeah, we're gonna try hit 5,500 by tonight after the show. So we'll see how that goes. Appreciate every single one of you. I always say it, and I'll keep saying it after every show. Everyone in the chat who's always interacting and getting your opinions in and offering questions and loads of other stuff. Yeah, I appreciate every single one of you. And in the TikTok as well who's interacting. So have a lovely weekend, everyone. We'll see you at 6:30 tonight.